Every single day, thousands of poker players open a solver, load a range chart, drill GTO frequencies for 2 hours, and then sit down at a tournament table and bleed money. Not because the solver is wrong, not because the charts are inaccurate, but because they are studying the wrong thing entirely. And nobody in this industry is telling you that. I'm going to tell you right now. Here is the uncomfortable number. Research tracking recreational and semi-professional poker players over 12 months found that increased study time alone had almost zero correlation with improved win rates when the study was purely technical. Zero. The players who improved dramatically were not the ones who spent more hours on solvers. They were the ones who studied something the poker world almost never talks about. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that is, why it changes everything, and how to start doing it tonight. But first, I need to destroy something you believe. You believe that if you just understood ranges better, understood GTO deeper, understood bet sizing more precisely, your results would transform. That belief is costing you money every single session. Here is why. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Behavioral Decision Making tracked decision quality in high cognitive load environments. The finding was devastating. When stress levels crossed a certain threshold, participants could not access learned technical knowledge. It was stored in their brain. It was correct, but it was inaccessible, locked behind a wall of cortisol and amygdala activation that no amount of solver study had ever trained them to break through. You know what that means in real language? It means every bad beat you take, every 3-bet you did not expect, every cooler at a critical moment builds a wall between you and everything you studied, and you keep studying the wrong side of that wall. The players who beat this game consistently are not studying poker harder. They are studying themselves. They are studying pressure. They are studying the human mind under fire. And when you understand what they are actually doing, you will never look at a study session the same way again. Stay with me. This is where it gets extraordinary. Let me show you 2 players. Same bankroll, same number of hours studied, same solver, same training site subscription. Player A spends 90% of study time on technical poker content, ranges, frequencies, bet sizing, ICM calculations. Player B spends 60% on technical content and 40% on what I'm about to describe. After 1 year, Player A is roughly where he started, maybe slightly better, frustrated, convinced he just runs bad. Player B has moved up 2 stakes, doubled his bankroll, and plays with a calm that other players at the table find genuinely unsettling. The difference is not talent. It is not variance. It is not even volume of study. It is the 40%. And here's what that 40% looks like in practice. Player B studied pressure. Not by reading about pressure, by deliberately creating it. He started doing something called stress inoculation training, a technique used by Navy SEALs, surgeons, and elite athletes to pre-expose the nervous system to high-stress conditions, so that real high-stress events no longer trigger the same catastrophic neurological response. In poker terms, he ran simulated high-pressure spots before sessions. He practiced folding premium hands in losing scenarios with a timer running. He created physical discomfort during study to train his decision system to work under load. Sounds strange. The results are not strange at all. The United States Army Research Institute published findings showing that stress inoculation training improved decision accuracy by 31% in high-pressure real-world scenarios compared to groups who only received traditional instruction. 31%. In poker, a 31% improvement in decision accuracy at critical moments is not a small edge. It is a complete game transformation. That is the difference between busting on the bubble and winning the tournament. Stop studying what to do. Start training your system to do it when it actually counts. That distinction right there is worth more than 1,000 hours of solver work. And we are just getting started. Researchers embedded at the 2022 World Series of Poker by performance scientists from the UNLV International Gaming Institute documented something that the poker media completely ignored. Players who reached the final table were not distinguished by which solver they used or how many hours they drilled ranges. They were distinguished by routines. Specific pre-game routines, between hand routines, and post-session routines that had nothing to do with poker strategy and everything to do with keeping their decision system in peak condition across 10 to 12 hours of brutal competitive play. The most documented of these routines was a breathing protocol used between every significant hand. 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds, out 4 seconds. Box breathing, a technique developed by the United States Navy SEALs to rapidly downregulate the sympathetic nervous system after a stress spike. What this does physiologically is remarkable. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system within 90 seconds, drops cortisol levels measurably, and restores prefrontal cortex function, which is exactly the part of your brain responsible for calculating pot odds, range construction, and bet sizing decisions. Think about what that means. Between every hand, these players were performing a 45-second neurological reset that kept their decision quality at the same level in hour 10 as it was in hour 1. Meanwhile, their opponents were accumulating stress, accumulating cortisol, accumulating cognitive fatigue, and making increasingly degraded decisions as the tournament progressed. They were not just playing better poker. They were playing the same poker while everyone else was playing worse and worse poker. That gap compounds over the course of a tournament day like interest on debt. So here is the first replacement study practice. Instead of drilling one more hour of GTO frequencies tonight, spend 20 minutes learning and practicing box breathing until it becomes automatic. Not because it's relaxing, because it's a performance tool that restores the neurological conditions required to access everything you already know. You do not need to know more. You need to be able to access what you know under fire. That is a completely different problem with a completely different solution. Now I want to talk about the most expensive habit in poker. Not playing too many hands, not calling too wide, not 3-betting too rarely. The most expensive habit in poker is reviewing your sessions wrong. And almost every player does it wrong. Almost every single one. Here's what wrong looks like. You finish a session. You open your hand history or your nates. You look for the big hands, the bad beats, the coolers, the spots where you felt like you played well and lost anyway. You might review 1 or 2 technical decisions, then you close the file and feel slightly better or slightly worse than before you opened it. That review session taught you almost nothing. And here's the neuroscience of why. The brain has a negativity bias, documented extensively by psychologist Roy Baumeister, where negative events register with approximately 3 times the psychological impact of equivalent positive events. When you review sessions through an emotional lens, your brain is not collecting objective data. It is running a highlight reel of pain, automatically filtering for confirmation of whatever story you already believe about your play, your run good, your table conditions. This is confirmation bias on steroids, and it means your review sessions are actively reinforcing the wrong lessons. Here's what right looks like. You finish a session. You wait 30 minutes before reviewing. This is not optional. During a session, your brain is soaked in stress hormones that distort memory formation. 30 minutes of low stimulation activity, walking, stretching, drinking water, allows cortisol to clear sufficiently for objective memory access. Then you open your session with one question only. Not what went wrong. Not where did I run bad. One question. Where did my decision process break down, independent of the outcome? A fold can be a bad decision that won. A call can be a good decision that lost. You are evaluating process, not outcome. Always process, never outcome. The players who improve fastest are not the ones who study most. They are the ones whose feedback loops are most accurate. Fix the feedback loop, and you fix the trajectory of your entire career. Here is what wrong looks like. You finish a session, you open your hand history or your notes, you look for the big hands, the bad beats, the coolers, the spots where you felt like you played well and lost anyway. You might review 1 or 2 technical decisions. Then you close the file and feel slightly better or slightly worse than before you opened it. That review session taught you almost nothing. And here is the neuroscience of why. The brain has a negativity bias, documented extensively by psychologist Roy Baumeister, where negative events register with approximately 3 times the psychological impact of equivalent positive events. When you review sessions through an emotional lens, your brain is not collecting objective data. It is running a highlight reel of pain, automatically filtering for confirmation of whatever story you already believe about your play, your run good, your table conditions. This is confirmation bias on steroids, and it means your review sessions are actively reinforcing the wrong lessons. Here is what right looks like. You finish a session, you wait 30 minutes before reviewing. This is not optional. During a session, your brain is soaked in stress hormones that distort memory formation. 30 minutes of low stimulation activity, walking, stretching, drinking water, allows cortisol to clear sufficiently for objective memory access. Then you open your session with one question only. Not what went wrong, not where did I run bad. One question: where did my decision process break down independent of the outcome? A fold can be a bad decision that won. A call can be a good decision that lost. You are evaluating process, not outcome. Always process, never outcome. The players who improve fastest are not the ones who study most. They are the ones whose feedback loops are most accurate. Fix the feedback loop, and you fix the trajectory of your entire career. I want to give you the single most powerful concept in this entire video. And I want you to hear it completely before you decide what to think about it. The concept is called cognitive load management. And it is the reason that some players seem to have infinite mental energy at the table, while others are visibly exhausted by level 3. Your brain has a processing capacity. Neuroscientists call it working memory bandwidth. The average human working memory can hold approximately 4 chunks of information simultaneously at peak performance. In a poker tournament, every active hand requires you to process your cards, position, stack sizes, opponent tendencies, pot odds, implied odds, range construction, and table image simultaneously. That is not 4 chunks. That is closer to 20. Which means you are operating beyond your working memory capacity on every significant hand, all day long. Elite players do not have bigger working memories. They have automated more of the routine processes so that their working memory is free for what matters. This is exactly how chess grandmasters work. Research by psychologist Herbert Simon showed that grandmasters recognize board patterns as single chunks rather than individual pieces. They are not thinking about each piece. They see patterns. That pattern recognition frees cognitive bandwidth for strategic thinking. In poker, this means that the more you automate your pre-flop ranges until they require zero conscious processing, the more bandwidth you free for the decisions that actually win tournaments. Reading timing tells, recognizing tilt patterns in opponents, identifying when a player has shifted from their baseline aggression. These are the decisions that separate final table players from bubble boys. And you can only access them when your cognitive bandwidth is not consumed by trying to remember whether you should be opening suited connectors from UTG2 with 15 big blinds. Here is the practice. Take your most common pre-flop spots in the specific tournament structures you play most often, and drill them until the decision is genuinely automatic. Not until you think you know them, until you have to consciously try to make the wrong decision. Then, your brain is free to do what no solver can do. Read human beings in real time. Let me tell you about a study that should make every poker player furious. In 2019, researchers at the University of Chicago embedded observers at poker tables across multiple venues and tracked one specific variable. Not win rates, not decision accuracy. The variable was how often players looked at their chips immediately after receiving their hole cards. The finding was extraordinary. Players who looked at their chips after seeing strong hole cards won significantly less money in those hands than players who maintained neutral physical behavior. The tell was not intentional. It was automatic, completely outside conscious control. This is what behavioral leakage looks like, and every player at your table is doing it constantly. The player who immediately sits up straighter when the flop comes. The player whose betting tempo changes by exactly 2 seconds when they are bluffing versus value betting. The player who asks the dealer for a chip count only when they have a made hand. These are not tells you find in books. These are behavioral signatures that emerge from the gap between conscious and automatic behavior. Here is the practice that elite players use and almost nobody teaches. It is called baseline mapping. Before you play a single hand in a new session, you spend the first 2 orbits doing nothing but watching. Not watching poker, watching people. You are building a behavioral baseline for every player at your table. How do they handle their chips when they fold? What does their posture look like when they are waiting for action? How quickly do they act on routine streets? You are not looking for tells yet. You are building the normal template that makes deviations visible later. This is exactly what FBI negotiators do when they enter a new room. Before they speak a single word, they observe. They map the baseline of every person present. You cannot identify a deviation. And in poker, deviations are the most valuable information available. More valuable than any range chart. More valuable than any solver output. Because in this exact moment, against this exact player, the deviation tells you the truth about their hand in real time. Stop studying hand charts. Start studying humans. The chart tells you what should happen mathematically. The human tells you what is actually happening right now. This part is going to change how you think about money and poker forever. Are you ready for something that is going to be uncomfortable? Here it is. Most poker players do not have a poker problem. They have a money relationship problem that shows up at the poker table. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely spent years studying irrational economic decisions and documented something he called pain of paying. Every time a human being spends money, there is a neurological pain response proportional to the perceived value of what is being exchanged. In poker, this pain response fires every single time you put chips in the pot. Every call, every raise, every blind posted activates a micro-stress response in your nervous system. And here's the devastating part. That stress response is not proportional to the correct decision. It is proportional to your individual psychological relationship with money and loss. A player who is deeply loss-averse will feel 3 times the neurological pain on a call that a player with a healthy financial mindset feels, even if the call is identical mathematically. That pain distorts the decision. Not dramatically, not obviously, just enough to make you fold 2% more often than optimal in pressure spots. Call 2% tighter than the range demands. Bluff 2% less frequently than the frequency requires. 2% might seem small. Over 10,000 hands, 2% is the difference between a winning player and a losing player. The solution is not to care less about money. That is not realistic and not the point. The solution is to restructure how your brain categorizes poker chips during play. This is a documented technique used by professional traders called abstraction of value. Before sessions, elite players deliberately shift their mental framework from thinking in dollar amounts to thinking in units of expected value. A chip is not a dollar. A chip is a unit of equity. Making the call is not spending money, it is executing a positive expected value calculation. This sounds like semantics. It is not. Brain imaging research shows that when subjects reframe financial decisions in terms of probability and expected value, rather than loss and gain, the amygdala activity associated with financial pain drops significantly. Cleaner prefrontal cortex function means better decisions. It is a direct neurological chain from your mental framing to your decision quality at the table. We getting close to the end, and I want to make sure you leave this video with something you can use tonight. Not next week, tonight. So here are 3 practices that the top poker minds in the world use that you have probably never seen in any poker training content. The first is called opponent narrative building. After every session where you faced a significant decision against a specific player, before you review the hand technically, you write 2 sentences describing that player as a person. Not as a poker player, as a human being. What are they afraid of at this table? What are they trying to prove? This practice activates your theory of mind, the neurological system responsible for modeling other people's mental states, and dramatically improves your real-time read accuracy in subsequent sessions against similar personality types. But the second practice is the one that most players dismiss until the first time it saves their stack. It is called emotional temperature tracking. You create a simple scale from 1 to 10, and at the beginning of every orbit, you rate your current emotional temperature. 1 is completely calm and present. 10 is maximum tilt or anxiety. Any reading above 6 triggers an automatic response. Fold the next 2 hands regardless of cards, perform 1 round of box breathing, and reset the temperature rating. This creates a feedback system that catches tilt in its early stages before it cascades into stack destruction. The players who wait until they feel obvious tilt have already made 3 or 4 compromised decisions. The players who track emotional temperature catch it at a 4 and stop it before it reaches 7. And the third practice is the most powerful and the most ignored of everything in this video. It is called future self-journaling. Twice per week, you spend 10 minutes writing from the perspective of the poker player you intend to be in 12 months. Not who you are now, who you are becoming. You describe how that player thinks about bad beats, how they handle downswings, how they approach study sessions, how they feel when they sit down at a final table. This is not positive thinking. This is identity architecture. Research from Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck confirms that individuals who construct clear, future identity narratives outperform those who focus only on current performance in every measurable metric of skill acquisition. You are not just building a poker game, you are building a poker mind, and the mind is built in the quiet moments between the sessions, not during them. Here is the truth that this entire video has been building toward. And I want you to sit with this for a moment before the video ends. The poker industry sold you a lie. Not out of malice, out of commercial incentive. Solvers are sellable. Range charts are sellable. But the real edge, the thing that actually separates the players who build lives around this game from the players who grind forever without getting there, that edge is internal. It is built through self-awareness, nervous system training, emotional architecture, behavioral intelligence, and the kind of deep study that never shows up on a training site's curriculum. Think about every great player you have ever watched and wondered what makes them different. Phil Ivey sitting motionless for 10 minutes before acting on a critical river decision. Fedor Holes talking publicly about meditation and mental training as the foundation of his game, not his solver work. Vanessa Selbst, one of the most analytically gifted players in history, publicly crediting mindset work and psychological self-awareness as the breakthrough that took her to the top of the game. These are not accidents. These are people who discovered what you just learned in this video and built entire systems around it. So here's what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow, right now. I want you to stop the next study session you had planned that is purely technical and replace 60 minutes of it with one of the practices from this video. Baseline mapping, emotional temperature tracking, opponent narrative building, stress inoculation, future self-journaling. Pick one, start tonight, and watch what happens to your game over the next 30 days. And if you want the complete system, everything in this video plus 9 more frameworks exactly like it, built into a structured learning path with practical protocols for every situation you will face at the table. It is all inside Collection 2, 10 ebooks and 5 premium bonus ebooks, covering the complete mental and strategic system for tournament poker. The link is in the pinned comment below this video. $29.89, not for books, for the system that changes how you think about this game permanently. If this video opened something in your mind, if something here made you pause and think in a way that poker content rarely makes you think, then subscribe to this channel right now, because what you just watched is what we do here every single week. Not hand reviews, not solver outputs. We study the game above the game. We study the mind that plays the game. And the players who find this channel and stay are the players who stop wondering why they are not improving and start building the version of themselves that actually wins. Share this video with one player who needs to hear it, not because it helps the channel, but because you know someone who has been grinding and studying and working and still feeling stuck. This video is the answer they have been looking for, and you have the chance to give that to them today. The best players in the world are not studying what you have been studying. Now you know what they are studying instead. See you in the next class.
You're bluffing. 10,000 more. He's got eyes.